Hey everyone! Today we're going to be solving some problems that involve completing the whole. We'll be looking for the missing fraction in a circle. Before we start looking at the new material, let's do a quick revisit here of what you already know about fractions. If I were to start with a circle, and I told you that half of it is shaded in black, what portion of my circle is shaded in red? You guys should probably easily tell me that that's 1/2, because a half plus a half would make up the whole. Right? What if I instead had this circle, and I have it split into thirds, and I tell you that the blue portion makes up 2/3, and if I said, what's this missing piece here, you would probably just say, well, if the blue is 2/3, then what's left has to be 1/3, because you already know that in order to complete this circle, all the pieces have to add up to a whole. Well, we're going to build off that idea to complete some more complicated problems today. So here's a problem that has the same idea, but it looks a little different because our denominators are different. Okay, so what we're going to try to figure out here is, what is this missing piece? All right, we know that the two pieces we have plus that third piece have to add up to a whole, just like on the last slide. So what we can say is, well, 2/5 plus 1/3 plus this unknown piece has to add up to 1, has to be a whole. All right, so how can we find that missing wedge? What do we need to do here? Any ideas? I'm going to give you a second to kind of think about it. Let's see first how much of this we do know. So I'm going to outline that in blue here. Okay, so I'm going to try to figure out what portion of the circle we know. So to do that, I'm going to add 2/5 and 1/3. But you guys should know by now, when you're adding fractions, you have to have common denominators. So that's what you'll see me working on the side here. All right, we're going to turn them into 15ths, because 5 and 3 both go into 15. And so 2/5 becomes 6/15, and 1/3 becomes 5/15. And what we get here is 11/15. Now, that's not the portion of our missing circle. What that represents is the amount of the circle that's shaded in blue. That's 2/5 plus 1/3. Okay, so if 11/15 of our circle is the blue portion, then we need to take that away from a whole to figure out what this missing red wedge is. So we're going to say 1 whole, or 1, minus the blue portion, 11/15, has to equal whatever our red portion is. So the whole, take away what we know, gives us that unknown piece. I'm going to rewrite 1 as 15/15. And the reason I do that is because if you look at the fraction we're subtracting, we want it to be out of 15ths. So with common denominators here, I have 15/15 minus 11/15, and I just subtract across, I get 4/15. Now, some of you could spot that right away without having to write out this subtraction problem, and that's fine. If you know that 11/15 is the blue piece and 4/15 makes up the red, then you can just show that on your paper right away. So what we get here is our answer. 4/15 is that question mark piece, the unknown. So here's a summary of what we did on that last problem. I'd like you to take notes on it or screen capture it so you can reference it later. First, you rewrite the fractions as equivalent fractions, making sure that you turn them into fractions with common denominators. All right, and then you need to add the pieces of the circle that you know, and that's going to tell you how much of the whole that you already know that's been identified. And then the part a lot of times people forget is then you take that number and subtract it from the whole, or you figure out how many more pieces do you need to make up the whole. All right, and that'll tell you the size of the missing piece. And always simplify if you can when you get your final answer. Let's take a look at another example together. So in this picture, I'm trying to figure out what this missing question mark is. I'm just going to outline that in red. That's the red piece I'll be referring to. All right, so what do we know? Well, we know that this 1/3 plus 1/6 plus 2/5 plus this little wedge all have to make up a whole. because altogether they form the circle. So I'm going to write an equation to show what I just said there, that 1/3 plus 1/6 plus 2/5 plus that unknown piece have to add up to 1. They have to add up to a whole. Okay, so in order to find that piece, we need to first rewrite our fractions as equivalent fractions with common denominators. So now you should be thinking, what number does 3, 6, and 5 go into? What's a common multiple of those three? How about 30? All right, I can turn thirds into 30ths by multiplying by 10. If I do it to the bottom, I better do it to the top. So I've got 10 30ths plus, so to get from 6 to 30, I need to multiply by 5 on bottom and top. So I have 5 30ths plus, now on my last one here, I need to get fifths into 30ths. So I'll multiply the denominator by 6. I'll do the same thing to the numerator, and I have 12 30ths. And when I add those three together, we just add across the top. I've got 10 and 12 is 22 plus 5 is 27 30ths. All right, so this blue piece up here, we just found out, adds up to 27 30ths. Now don't stop there. Sometimes people think that's their final answer and they forget that third step here. We need to subtract the sum from a whole, or we need to do 1 minus 27 30ths. Or you can just ask yourself, how many more 30ths do I need to add up to a whole? Well, if I have 27 30ths in that blue piece, then I have to have 3 30ths as my missing red piece. And again, I got that from doing 30 30ths, which is our whole, minus the 27 30ths that were in blue, and we get 3 30ths. Now we're not quite done because we still need to simplify when we can, and in this case we can. They're both divisible by 3. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 30 divided by 3 is 10. So we just figured out that our missing wedge, our missing piece, is 1/10. Do you know how you could check to see if your answer is correct here? If you just want to add up each of the pieces, the 1/10 plus 2/5 plus 1/6 plus 1/3, it should add up to a whole, or add up to 30 30ths. And when you check it, you'll see that it does. Let's take a look at how this can help us solve a word problem. Stella spent a Saturday working around the house with her mom. She spent 1/3 of her time doing laundry, 1/4 of her time cleaning her room, 1/12 of her time dusting, and the rest of her time working in the yard. What portion of her workday was spent working in the yard? Draw a diagram to help and show all of your work. All right, so I'm going to draw a diagram here to represent the situation. And I'm going to draw this circle to represent Stella's whole day working. Okay, this represents the whole here. She spent 1/3 of her time doing laundry. So I'm just going to kind of draw about a third here. It's a rough estimate, and I'll put L for laundry. She spent about 1/4 of her time cleaning her room, so maybe that's right about here. I'll put, let's do R for room. 1/12 of her time dusting, so there's a little sliver. 1/12 D. And then the rest of her time working in the yard. So this is our Y. This is our unknown. All right, so in order to figure out the portion of her day that was spent in the yard, we need to first figure out the portion of her day spent doing those other three things. So let's write an equation here. 1/3 plus 1/4 plus 1/12 plus this unknown equals Stella's whole day. All right, so finding a common denominator. Well, this one's pretty easy. I can see 3, 4, and 12 all go into 12. So we need to multiply this one by 4/4, and our new fraction is 4/12, plus, let's multiply this one by 3/3 to rename it, and we have 3/12, and then 1/12 we can just bring down. There's nothing to do to that one. And so 4 plus 3 plus 1 equals 8/12. So let's highlight this here in blue. So this portion of her day that we already know was 8/12. Okay, so then what's this unknown piece that we're looking for? Well, to get from 12 twelfths, 12 twelfths minus 8 twelfths will give us an answer of 4 twelfths. So that's how many more you would need to make up that whole day. So this unknown piece of working in the yard was 4 twelfths. Now, the last thing we need to make sure we do is simplify it. And I know they're both divisible by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. And so I see that Stella spent, I'm going to write it out, 1/3 of her day in the yard. Running out of room. Here we go. Okay? Since it was a word problem, I wanted to answer it in a sentence. So Stella spent 1/3 of her day in the yard. Let's take a look at a final example before you move on to the practice problems. So in this case, we know 1/5 plus 3/10 plus 3/20 plus this unknown piece has to add up to 1. So our common denominators here are going to be, we're going to turn it into 20ths. All right, so 5 times 4 and 1 times 4 gives us an equivalent fraction of 4/20. Plus, let's multiply this one, numerator and denominator, both by 2. So 2 halves, and we end up with 3 times 2 is 6, and 10 times 2 is 20. And then 3/20 can stay just as it is. All right, and so the 3 pieces that we know add up to, let's see, 4 plus 6 is 10, plus 3 is 13/20. So again, I like the colors here. So this blue piece up above adds up to 13/20. So that means this missing piece has to be 7/20. And again, you could show that on paper here by doing 20/20, which is just another way of saying a whole, minus the 13/20 that we know is equal to 7/20, that remaining piece. If you feel like you have the hang of it and you're ready to try it on your own, you can stop the video here and move on to the next item in the folder. If, however, you feel like you need a little bit more practice, you can try any or all of the problems that are on the slide in front of you. Just pause the video, work through them, and then come back and see if your answers are correct. All right, here are the answers for those 4 problems, and if you missed any, you can walk through the steps that I have on the screen and kind of check your work as you go. Talk to your teacher or ask a classmate if you have further questions. Thanks for watching.